Welcome to A Shot Between the Reels. My name is Dan, and over this side,
My name is Brendan.
my name is Brendan. There he is. How are you today, Brendan?
Yes, I'm very well, Dan. How are you?
I am okay. I'm good, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
doing fine.
good.
Yes, been a rather lovely day over here in Whitstable, which is
Yeah.
where I live. How about you, Brendan? You're near Wales somewhere, aren't you?
I live in Ross, yes, and it's lovely here. It's been good weather all day. I've been stuck at my
Lovely.
desk
Oh,
because yes, that's life. I'm working.
yes. Well, I've had a family kind of day. Family day. So,
Nice.
yeah, it's been nice.
Yeah.
And I've had ice cream.
Ooh, very
Lovely.
nice.
So, let's talk movies.
Yes.
Let's have a frank discussion about movies.
Let's do it.
One movie in particular tonight.
Yeah.
Brendan, tell us, what is the film?
So it's a great pleasure this evening that we get to talk about Blade Runner 2049.
Yes, yes, I love this film. I'm putting that straight out there. Directed by Denis Villeneuve. Did we see this together?
We did, yeah. We went
There
to
was a
cinema
few of
together.
us, wasn't there?
There was a small group of, I think,
Men.
people that had great love for the original, shall we say?
Yes,
Yes.
because I think I went twice because my father-in-law couldn't join us
Ah,
because he
yes.
had
That's
some commitments. So I said, I'll go again.
he wasn't allowed out, as I remember
Oh,
it.
yeah. Not allowed to come out and play.
Oh no.
Well, such is married life at times. You
True.
have to
Very true.
do as you're told for our own good. Um, yes. Anyway, Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Obviously, a sequel to the original Blade Runner.
Yep.
So, if anyone has not seen this film, or indeed not seen the original Blade Runner, what have you been doing? You need to stop this video now and correct that massive mistake that you have made by not watching this film or the original Blade Runner. And hopefully you have just rejoined this video, having spent the last 4 hours or so, 5 hours probably actually by the time we watch
Yes.
both, watching those two films back to back, having just paused the video and come back. Do you think that's what's happened, Brendan?
That's
I hope so.
absolutely what's happened. That's what's happened.
I hope so. So, Brendan, do you want to kind of tell us a bit about this film? I think because we're going to get into it and there's so much that happens. Just tell us kind of maybe the setup of the story
Yep.
for this
That's
film.
fine. So the general thing here is, I think probably you're going to get more of it because if you've watched the first, you get kind of context for what's happening in the second, because there's a lot of follow on with characters and everything else that's happening. But the main gist of the story is that you have Officer K, who you're following throughout the story, who's played by Ryan Gosling. And the general thing is he is a Blade Runner, much in the same way that Harrison Ford is a Blade Runner in the first film. And what that character essentially does is they hunt down replicants who are essentially also robots, I guess, of that world, that they look like humans. And they're very high functioning, and they're generally hated by society because they're almost better functioning than a human. So they have no real problems to speak of, but they have normally a limited lifespan. It's not touched on as much in this film, but the idea is that a Blade Runner retires replicants, so they go out afterwards and they remove them off this
It's
model.
a certain type of replicant, isn't it? It's like the
Yes.
earlier models that don't have this end of life feature
Yeah.
set in.
Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of who
So
he targets.
yeah, we're following him at the beginning of this film, following through on that task and going out to still visit these people. But as he goes out, he discovers some interesting information about there potentially being a replicant child, a child that's born of a replicant. They kind of can't believe it, and then it becomes this sort of hush operation to keep this information out of the public eye because the
Yeah.
police believe that it would just destroy society as they know it.
Yeah.
So then
So they're kind of trying to find this child.
Yes, him discovering the information. Right. That's really what the main part of the film is, I guess. Yeah.
That's very good, Brendan. Very good. But there's obviously, because it's a previous film, there's a lot of backstory context that is kind of filling out the kind of, I don't know, how would you describe it?
Well, it's world building.
Fills out the world. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And I think the original Blade Runner, talking about world building, is probably one of the best films that does world building.
Definitely.
Out there. Okay. Yeah. So certainly sort of that science fiction, we talk about influence.
Mm-hmm.
Blade Runner is about as influential as they come.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know how you felt about a Blade Runner sequel coming out. I was excited.
When they announced it, I think a lot of the time when you hear about a sequel, especially the distance of time between sequels, I mean, I don't know if there's another film could really match the amount of time that's taken place between sequels in terms of what this film did. But I don't know if I was even remotely kind of met with any idea of trepidation surrounding it, mainly because I love the director, so I was already
Denis.
on board with all of that. And then I think I just love the world. I think if you really connect with the first one, you almost instantly want more of it. That's how I kind of come away from it. And I think that idea that they were coming back to explore more of this world and doing it with the technology that we have today, I was like, I am on board. And like, if they nail it, then they're going to really nail it. And I think
as well, like with Harrison being back in it, that was also another kind of like knowing how invested he was in the first film. We know quite well that Ridley Scott and he had very different viewpoints. It wasn't the best filming experience from a lot of people on that set.
Mm-hmm.
So for him, you could tell that actually that character of Deckard is one that he has a deep investment in. But I imagine if it wasn't good enough, he would not have been interested in it. So
I mean, Harrison's is a bit of an odd one, I think, really, because you get the feeling that sometimes he's in projects where I think they must have just wheeled a dump truck of money up to his front door and just said, "Can you do this project?" Like he's notorious, I think, isn't he, for basically saying they work around his needs in films. So, and often that can be a complete detriment to a film. So he'll say like, I don't want to go anywhere outside of where I live. And they say, well, you're Harrison Ford, so we'll just do anything for you because why not? But in this case, I was going to say that particularly with him, I feel like he does actually care about the character. It comes across in the film that there's more of a connection for him to do a good job. I don't feel like he's phoning it in. The one thing that I disliked, though, is that I think they should not have revealed that he was in the film at all. Because how much of a more power would have it had if they'd said nothing? If they'd said nothing and they just revealed him in the film, you'd be like, oh my word. I mean, I know they couldn't do that, but it's still...
Yeah. I mean, like, there's an element that marketing value, being able to say Harrison's in it.
Yeah.
And like I just said, that kind of gives an element of trust to the fans.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I know what you mean. There's an element that like he's just plastered all over promotional stuff.
He's everything, right? He's in all the posters.
You don't see him till an hour and 45 minutes into the film.
Exactly.
There are other films, a lot of films, by which point the film has ended. Any film that's less than an hour and 45 minutes, he wouldn't have been in it.
Yeah.
it's a long time. You've got to wait till he appears.
Yeah, it's like you basically watched an entire film and then Harrison Ford shows up.
Which is great. And to be fair, like, it is worth the wait. I think this is his
Yeah.
best performance. I don't know, since his kind of prime. I would argue. I can't think of, certainly out of the films I've seen them. I probably haven't seen them all. Out of the films I've seen, I don't think he's done one as good as this performance-wise.
Definitely in his
this
more
turn of
recent
the millennia, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway,
go on.
Let's backtrack a bit.
Yeah, we're digressing. Go on.
We're going to go off in all sorts of tangents. So let's start off with Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah.
And I also want to, at the same time, I wonder if we want to talk about the cinematography as well, Roger Deakins.
Absolutely.
But I imagine, because I think they're entwined really in this film. What are your thoughts on Denis?
I mean, I note it. I put in my notes that this is one of those films where I would say it's a strong contender for every frame of painting. Like the whole film is just. When I was coming to draw off the back of this, and I was putting together the image that goes as part of our like social media rollout, and I was thinking, well, where do I even begin? There is almost every shot in this film is beautiful, and you could just take a snapshot of your film, and just hang it on your wall and be like, this is a genuine work of art. I mean, the whole thing is like a moving painting, and I cannot stress it enough. I think watching it again, it doesn't do it justice watching it on a small screen for starters, but I think as I was saying, I was like, man, this film is breathtaking. They totally nail it all. I mean, it matches perfectly with the pacing of the original film. I think it is deliberate in how it sets up shots. You've got so many, I think, unique but really interesting camera movements. The way they sweep through environments, they're using a combination of you having drone footage, but interestingly shot environments. And again, because of the world building of Blade Runner, you have these incredible sort of neon dripping landscapes of technology, but then you've also got the vast desolate wastelands that they show as well. And because they almost cut the film in half, showing one half like that and one half like the other, very much how the poster frames the film as well. It totally lends to it. I think they're doing all these sorts of really cool things, and I think every scene you're fully invested in because it is shot so beautifully. It doesn't give you a chance, but you have to drink it in. I think you have to kind of take every aspect of what the film is giving because it demands that you look at it. It's not a film where you could ever really, I think, look away because you'd ultimately miss what the film is trying to put across. I don't know. How do you?
No, I think this film looks incredible. I read or heard that Denis Villeneuve, one of the first things he did was get Roger Deakins involved. And I think they spent several days, I think a whole week together, just hashing out the film.
I love that.
Which, I mean, like, imagine being a fly on that wall. I mean, and you can really see the work that they put in. I think the thing for me is when you think about the original Blade Runner, I mean, that landscape is massively iconic, but you only really see one. Do you kind of have this kind of over the city look and the landscape from above and across, and then you have kind of the on the street level, and that's the only stuff you see. Whereas this one, obviously, they're going big and they're going bigger, and they're building on what's gone before, and you see some of that style from the original. But man, you go to other places, and crikey, visually, it's stunning. When you see like the sort of the big landscapes that are kind of like this kind of farmland type places where they're synthetically growing stuff, and that palette of the sort of the whites and the greys, and then you have the Vegas sequence in that amazing orange color.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the junkyard set. I do kind of find it funny how San Diego is basically a junkyard. It's just like the whole place.
Like giant
No
fire
one lives there
pits and
anymore.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, just some incredible stuff. That stuff near the end with the,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's that water sort of thing in the dark with the with the fight and the water and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Visually incredible.
It's great. I mean, you can imagine, I think, them almost setting, saying, what are all these like really cool set pieces that we could do? We want to make this look as incredible as possible. We want every time a new scene is introduced for it to be like, whoa, what's that? What does that look like? I think they were probably looking at the first film and thinking, so the first film is, I mean, it's fair to say it's art house cinema, right? That's probably how you would describe it. It's science fiction art house. But I think the first film has, going back to it, all of these incredible backdrops to fantastic dialogue between characters and general things that are going on. But the backdrops are like nothing that you couldn't even really explain it to someone. I think you quite literally have to see it in order to think,
to get it.
whose mind was that coming out of? I mean, they were just putting this stuff down and I think because the first film is so iconic in cinema and it's known so very well, and it's such a great adaptation of Philip K. Dick's short story, but they bring it to life in a completely different way. They're advancing on something that is short and then just saying, here's this massive world that we're building out of it. We're taking small concepts and then making these incredible set pieces. And they must have felt like they had to deliver and big on another film. And they certainly do that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think one scene that particularly sort of just caught my eye when having rewatched it, was that fight sequence between Officer K and Deckard in that sort of entertainment room. And you have like the sort of cutting in and out of the technology that was providing the entertainment with Elvis and all these different characters and sort of famous people performing, and just how that looks and how immersive that was. When I just remembered how breathtaking that was in the cinema. And as a sensory experience, because you've got the lights flashing, there's the sound, which is amazing because it's like the music's cutting in and out, and then sometimes you have just the singing, and then and the visuals obviously are playing an effect as well. And I mean, whoever thought of that is genius.
It makes you smile, doesn't it? Because I think for me, I kept thinking when I was watching it again, this is so unique. How many other films have done something like this? It takes, like you say, elements of the song or the performances and cuts different bits in at different times, and you wonder how did they work out what would kind of go where, and when it's not annoying how it kind of pops in and out of audio because it's not done in an annoying way. It kind of matches with the elements of the action that you're seeing as well, how the whole scene is playing out, and it lights up the room so you get aspects of their silhouettes as well. I mean, it's honestly is absolutely beautiful. It's so well done.
So I think I remember, I was going to double check this, but I'm pretty sure Harrison Ford actually punches Ryan Gosling.
I think I heard that.
I'm sure he did. I think I saw it on telly when they were promoting it. I was like, imagine getting a proper punch from Harrison Ford.
I think he was probably kind of honoured in a weird sort.
Yeah, you would. You'd be like, hey everybody, I just got punched by Harrison Ford. And there's that bit, the way that scene finishes, where he's just Decker's just punching him and kept punching him, and then it's like, carry on doing this, I'll go and have a drink.
Yeah.
No, I love Ryan Gosling, I do, and just the way he's just like, I'll take that drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so
Good.
good.
It's
Yeah,
great.
great scene.
Properly
Um,
standout scene, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think these guys. I mean, Roger Deakins. He won an Oscar for this. I believe. I'm pretty sure he did. I'm not surprised.
No,
Just
not at all right.
this is just another level because there's an element that visually. I mean, you said like how there's kind of like almost two films, but there's just like almost each sort of chunk, each place. I mean, we've not even talked about Wallace's place, his kind of building. I mean,
No, and it's yeah,
the way they lit that and the way the lighting changes. I mean, obviously Wallace is blind, but they're playing with light because actually it doesn't affect his character, but it somehow obviously has an effect on the way people are feeling when they're in that room.
yes. Well, they're
Um,
just. I think the
Especially when
idea
he's
is
got
that
Deckard in there at the end, and like there's a
yeah,
point where he's just in complete darkness.
yeah. I think it's meant to be disorientating, isn't
Yeah,
it? I think
100%.
that's the idea. But the
Yeah,
way that I agree because it made me think back to when you're first introduced when he goes and he sees Rachel on the first film, right?
yeah,
And it's similar. I think it's similar sort of color palette that they work to.
yeah.
So it's
And I think like the sun setting, isn't it? I
yes,
want to
yeah,
say,
it is.
um, so that you've already got a bit of a playful thing with the light anyway.
Yeah, but they kind of dial
100%.
it. Yeah, they dial it up in this film. So you have,
Yeah,
like you say, the light is shifting throughout the room when he's in there with him, and there are times when he's completely dark. He's completely cast over in black, so it's just his like almost just his silhouette, and maybe a slight light across
yeah,
the side, his side profile, and those bits. I mean, because he's already quite a sinister character,
yeah,
but you're hearing kind of his different emotions come through at different points, and you're not really always sure where you sit with Wallace, but I think his it's so kind of perfectly done because there's times when he's truly cold, and I think it's well captured in that scene. That I mean, you're mentioning the same ones that I have written down. I mean, I've got a few of kind of my standout scenes, and you've already mentioned like two of them, and I'm thinking
yeah,
and it shows that they really ramp it up in the areas they mean to ramp it up to really catch your attention, and
yeah,
it's absolutely great. It's another thing I mentioned in a previous review when we talked about the Vast of Night, when sometimes you've just got these scenes where it's just dialogue and it's telling to me that you don't always need like this crazy action going on screen. I think you can just have fantastic dialogue that's happening and
with great actors.
yeah, with great actors, and then just like all this backdrop as well as just the icing on the cake to
Yeah,
make it really good. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think we could talk about the way this film looks for a long time.
yeah, definitely.
And the thing with Denis Villeneuve, I mean, he's one of my favourites as a director. I mean, I really like Prisoners. I think that's a really,
Great,
really good film.
fantastic.
And Arrival is another masterpiece, modern masterpiece, if you ask me. I think it's brilliant.
I love it. I really love
I
it.
really like Enemy, if you've seen that. Have you seen Enemy? Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
I mean, that just is amazing. Where he's got this
That's a
proper guy.
crazy film, but it's really good. It's
It
really
is so good. I've got it on the shelf up there. I need to watch it again.
good.
So yeah, and I've actually recently bought Incendies, which is a film that kind of got people seeing Denis Villeneuve because
Okay.
it's in French, I think. It might be in another language as well. But yeah, he got a lot of recognition for that.
Yeah.
It's quite high up on IMDb, or it used to be when I last looked. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that. So yeah, when I heard that he was on this, and obviously he's making June at the moment.
Which, oh my word. Yeah.
which
I'm,
just sounds
if anything,
fascinating.
just outright interested to see what can come out of that. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the other Dune, the Patrick
I
Stewart.
haven't. I haven't. I'm staying away.
Yeah, so that,
I'm
I mean, that
slowly plugging my way through the book at the moment. So
that's good. That's good. So I think it'll be very. Dune's a very kind of interesting thing to try and adapt anyway because it's kind of crazy, I think, and it's
yeah,
massive and it's sprawling.
there's an element
But
there, like having done. I mean, we've not done our star ratings, and I don't think anyone will get any prizes for guessing what we're going to give this film.
no,
But having done this, like doing a sequel to a Blade Runner that is flipping awesome,
yeah,
you basically can do whatever. I mean, I didn't
I
even talk
think
about
he's
Sicario either. I mean, Sicario's
yeah.
that is an intense film.
Well, he's got to be. I think he's probably one of the most trusted directors to take on a project of that magnitude. So I'm not surprised that he has Dune, but it'll be interesting, yes, to see how it turns out. I'd be very excited. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of directing and cinematography, wowzers, we've already talked a bit about some of the acting. Part of me wants to just go through some of these characters
Let's do it.
and just process what's going on in this story. Obviously, right near the start, we've got former wrestler, now actor. Do you know, I keep seeing him on Amazon Prime in that kids film that he's kind of done.
Oh yeah, he did.
But yeah, we've got Dave Bautista as Sapper Morton, and that's kind of how we're introduced to Officer K in that
Yes.
scene as well. It's the scene you sort of said at the start about where Officer K finds out about this child.
Mm.
There's an element that what I love about this character, he's not in it for long.
No, hardly
Actually,
anything.
he makes such an impression that it does its job and it feeds through the film. You don't forget about him. And it kind of reminds me a bit of like in Wolf of Wall Street, Matthew McConaughey. He's not in it a lot at all, but there's something about his character that just it stays with you.
Well, he steals the scene, doesn't he? So I think that, and they also they call back
Yeah,
to this character later in the film. You notice
yeah,
he actually kind of remembers something that he says, and it sticks with him. The talk of how you've never experienced a miracle.
yeah.
It
Which is
brings
a
it
great
back again.
line. A great line, isn't it?
It's great. It's great. I think his whole introduction is fantastic, right? Because you see him as that it's a way. I think it's meant to be as a way of establishing Kay's character and the morality of Kay's character, but you're also seeing how it sets up the strength of Kay as well, because the
Yeah,
actual physical strength that he takes David on and just throw that moment where it's an excellent fight scene, but where they're
yeah,
slamming each other against the walls and he just throws, I think it's like David Tister's character that throws him through the wall, isn't
yeah. He
it? And
does that
then
like smashing movement, doesn't he?
he's
Like,
just smashing him into
just pushes him through the wall, doesn't he? It's
and then
crazy.
he has him on the floor, and Cage just repeatedly punching him in the head to try and like wear him down. But I think uh, what's always kind of good in these Blade Runner films is showing the humanity of the replicants.
Yeah,
They're all kind of about that. So, and it's quite a sharp change, I think, in some ways in the tone and the pace of the first film, because it's a
yeah.
lot more physical, violent, and raw, I think, in some cases than the first film.
It certainly
The
does
first
it.
film,
You get it quicker, I think, don't you?
yes, the first film has it, but it takes longer to work into it, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
definitely have it in sort of the third act. It's very much
yeah,
like that. But this, from the get go, you're kind of getting all of that. But
yeah.
then it's mixing it perfectly with having the dialogue beforehand, which I love, between the characters and him
Yeah,
saying, this is nothing necessarily personal. It's like my job. I have to do it.
yeah, yeah.
So
No, it's a great kind of opening sequence, opening scene, and I think Batista does a good job. I mean, where do we go next? I think there are some great performances in this film. Obviously, we talked a bit about Harrison already,
Yeah.
so we probably leave him. Let's just go for Ryan. I mean, as Officer K, we are following his journey,
Yeah.
aren't we? He's learning stuff about himself and about about what he thinks is himself and discovering it. So he is this detective, and in essence is a detective character, and that kind of film, which is what the original Blade Runner is.
Yeah.
And his journey of discovery is great. I'm a massive Ryan Gosling fan. He doesn't rely on the dialogue, and if there's not much dialogue, he doesn't need it. I know that's not going to be to everyone's taste, but for me, I just love that stuff.
Yeah, it's told. I think it's a lot of it is told in. I want to say the emotion, but often it's kind of the whole point is that it lacks emotion because
Yeah,
he is more closely emulating a cold, calculating
yeah.
machine,
And
right?
as the film progresses, he begins to discover
Yes,
those emotions.
yes,
Yeah, and we
and
have that.
so
I mean, that comes through with the baseline test,
yes, yeah,
doesn't it? I'm guessing the whole point, from what I've not read up about it on people's theories, but how I see those baseline tests, they're trying to provoke emotions, and provoke kind of a response.
yeah. And I think it's to see kind of how quick he comes back with the reaction and how he reacts to it.
Yeah,
So you get you get the two different versions of that, don't you? Because I think you get the one where he baselines in and it is completely fine. They're like, "Oh, you check out as per normal," and then
yeah,
he comes back after learning something crazy.
yeah.
They do the baseline test, and he's just like, you are way off." Like, not
And it's
even.
interesting, isn't it? Because I imagine if you watch the two, it'd be quite subtle,
Yeah,
actually, at times. I think there's certainly a hesitation a couple of times, I think, in the second one.
yeah, definitely,
But the way he describes them as being way off baseline, yeah, it's a fascinating. I love those two sequences,
really good.
and the subtlety in his performance. I mean, you have the sequence where he's at his home, his little flat, and his relationship with Joy,
Yeah,
which we see kind of go in interesting directions from where it starts, and I love how in that you see him learning about kind of who he is
yeah,
and what it means to be in a relationship and to love
yeah.
someone, and yeah, fascinating to me, and I think Ryan does it really well.
Yeah, I think he's fantastic. He's embodying the character fully, so it does feel like you grow with him, and as you're learning things throughout the film. It should be kind of on the same level as him the whole way through. So
Yeah,
he's the grounding point that takes you through everything, and I think it's
yeah,
done. Yeah, I think it's done really well. I
yeah,
struggle to imagine who else they would have really got in the role because it's
yeah,
not it's not so much that he's playing it wooden. I think he's playing it exactly as
yeah,
you would expect someone to play it. It just comes off well. You fully believe that he is that character. And
yeah,
again, I
definitely.
think when you stop looking at it as you're watching that actor, but you're actually just watching a performance,
Yeah,
if that kind of makes any sense. I think it is
yeah,
something different altogether.
yeah,
I really loved it. And then him when you get to that point where he's playing off then against Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is obviously a strong player, and he's bringing a lot to this role, but it's not like he's not kind of super overshadowed by Harrison Ford. They play nicely together against each other,
yeah.
which is good. You've got
Yeah,
to
do you know
respect the
what?
fact that
There's an element for
yes,
me that I feel like with those two, I almost want to put them in a comedy.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? Because I can just imagine that being super funny
yeah. I
with
think it,
Harrison being the grumpy old man, um, and then just Ryan kind of playing off that. I think would be super funny.
Well, Ryan's good in the sense that I think he's a chameleon in a lot of in terms. If you look at the varying roles of acting that he's done, he can be really good at comedy, but then he's really good at being a stoic character, and he can
Yeah,
do all sorts of different roles. I think
yeah,
it's it's good to see someone so genuine taking on this role because I think, yeah, they got the best they could have got out of it. I feel like
yeah,
they had a very specific vision for what Kay was like, and that's what they got from him.
yeah. He nailed it. And the other sort of scenes that we journey with him are the ones with Robin Wright as Madam in that sort of work environment, and that and they're just some fascinating interactions.
Yeah,
As you see him kind of, there's a few moments where you can see the cogs are moving, and he's not saying what you get an impression that he's thinking something,
yes,
and he's not saying it,
yes,
just from the way Ryan's looking.
definitely.
And I love that. I love that. That's the sort of subtlety that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I mean, Robin Wright's always great. She's got such a kind of presence, and the two of them kind of interacting is really good.
yeah, definitely.
Um, but yeah, I think I'm not sure what else I could say. I mean, we could talk about the ending and maybe later, but yeah, we'll come back to that.
Yeah, I was gonna if I could say I wanted to make special comment to the music. I think the music is I mean I mean
Yeah.
it
So
ma-
hold up, Brendan.
go on.
Right. In terms of great soundtracks,
Yeah.
Vangelis doing the original Blade Runner, that soundtrack for me is so good.
Yeah.
If you sit and listen to it, it gives you emotion,
Yeah.
and uh, it's at times just otherworldly, which is what it's trying to do. And if you listen to it just on its own, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So and this is another point where like stepping up and trying to do a sequel, man, takes some big balls.
Yeah, definitely.
And this music is amazing.
It's I mean it's great. Cuz I made some I made some notes as I was watching and I was saying I think I put down about the sense of scale. I mentioned emotion, like you're saying there. I think you get it. You
Yeah,
really get it. I mean, the soundtrack should always be something that I think it doesn't take your it doesn't kind of take your attention away from something else. It merely just adds to the experience, and that's definitely what this soundtrack is doing here.
yeah,
Every time you're getting a sense of what the character is feeling, but you're it's kind of putting into the world building aspect of what
yeah,
you're seeing. It only seeks to add more to it. And I mean, you could say that for almost definitely for like your effects in this film, but you could also say it for the probably the general sound design as well. All
yeah,
of it is layering. You're getting a layered effect to create that perfect image, the thing
yeah,
that you get from the film. I think it's nothing short of like brilliant, really.
yeah,
Essentially, what I'm saying. I'm
yeah.
waffling about it because I love it, but I do love it. It's great.
I agree. I think it only adds to the film. It doesn't overshadow it at all. Some of the sequences that this film has, to be able to put the music to it, that just matches it perfectly and kind of. I mean, I just love it.
Yeah,
I remember when having seen this film, listening to the soundtrack soon after, and just being like, "This is just amazing." And I love how it gives enough of the touchstones to the original film. There's enough of those sounds um, that makes it feel like the sequel, but it's
yes,
also its own thing.
Yeah.
And actually, there's an element that the film itself does that a lot. We haven't talked about that yet. But those touchstones are really important to make it feel like we're in the same world.
Yeah, I agree.
But also, actually, we're building on some of those themes and some of the emotions we experienced in that first film. Watching that film, we get to kind of connect with this film, having connected with the other one. We get to bring them together, and the music really helps with that. I think
Absolutely.
really helps with that. So yeah, 100% agree. So what else do we need to talk about? I think
you mentioned earlier. I was just going to say of standout scenes. There was just one more that I wanted to say. You mentioned earlier about the scene in the car where you have Kay versus which is the main other.
Love, was it?
Love is the other one. Yeah,
with Deckard's kind of cuffed.
Yeah,
Can't get
like
out.
struggling in the car to get out, and he's just kind of witnessing the craziness.
Can I say just before that as well, where you've got those they're kind of cars, but they fly around, flying cars. They're kind of going off, and then Officer K kind of, he's coming, and the way those get taken out, is great, and the music
really
for that
good.
bit is brilliant as well.
So that's one of those scenes where they do some really cool things in that scene. They do great things with lighting, for starters, because it's at night. You've got the light from the inside of the car. You've got the light from the back of the car, haven't you? That's kind of shining down and bathing it in kind of like this orange, bleeding orange light at the back.
And the waters are playing tricks with the light.
I mean, that's great. That is so. Not only is the setting look fantastic for a fight scene, let's kind of like preface this as well, and then you have the fight scene itself. I think what I love about how this film is shot a lot of the time is it's very deliberate. You get these. It's not kind of like jump cuts like a modern action film is, which often for me is really annoying because you don't get a sense of how the action is flowing. What's nicer is to kind of pull back a little bit. I know it's harder because not every actor can fight and they have kind of all of that issue, but setting that aside, the way this scene is done, you feel the raw emotion between the characters, so you get all of that and the determination in what's happening with the characters as well, trying to ensure that each one wants to win and they're divulging like their information towards the end of the fight. But I think it's I'm kind of like lost for words, but I think the way that it's done, I love it. You get a few fight scenes in this film, and they all have their moments of, I think, properly delivering, and that this delivers on a note. It's really well done.
And I think particularly Love's character, her fighting is nuts.
Just
honestly, she looks so cool as well. Like the kicks that she does.
She's just all kicks in that scene.
I love it. I'm like, holy moly. Yeah, and she is like ferocious in her kicks as well. Yeah, 100%.
It's great.
We talked a bit about Nyanda Wallace, Jared Leto. It's fairly well documented that he had contacts in to make him blind on set.
Which is crazy, but
I'm like, you got to trust Jared Leto to do that sort of thing. Absolutely mad.
I think a special mention also should go to, I'm going to say her name wrong, but Ana de Armas, I think, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, she's a bit of a scene stealer, really.
Great.
Incredible.
And I mean, obviously, point of contention, it probably is not for everyone, but you have to appreciate how the love scene is shot. It's one of like the craziest. I'm sure this is something about it being really, really something like the most expensive love scene ever made. I think because of what's going on. So obviously, if you're listening to this, like you're watching this, you have already watched the film. I'm hoping, but that you get the two characters where they're overlapping movements, so you're seeing like hands intersect and move
Yeah.
at the same time. And so not only do you get these great interactions between her character and Ryan Gosling
Yeah.
throughout the film, so every time she's on scene, I think she is really good. She's a
Yeah.
great supporting cast member. I mean, almost it's got to be good when she's essentially supposed to just be a piece of software and you really genuinely care about her character.
Yeah.
I think all of that is great. She acts out fantastically,
Yeah.
and then you get that scene, which all I can think about, because obviously I have more of a background in design and a general interest in how all of that works. I just think, man, there's so much work that goes into creating just a small scene, but it
Yeah.
is done so well. It's so unique. Again, we're just talking about a love scene, but somehow they
No.
make it mean so much. It's done so well. It's
Yeah.
just
And the other scene with her as well that I liked was the one where he's checking for the well, it's not the DNA, but that kind of thing, the equivalent for the replicants. And he's on that machine, and that machine's really cool. And the way he's kind of working it, and then he kind of turns her on, and she's kind of moving in around
as
him.
she comes into
Yeah,
shot over
that's
him,
just
doesn't she?
crazy. Visually, it's really interesting, and
It's
also
really
like
cool.
she's the one who kind of plants that seed and kind of keeps reminding Kay that he's special. You know that there's something more that he's destined for. You know that actually he's not just another sort of guy or replicant. He's
Can
special.
I talk briefly about the only thing that I'm not sure about? Just
Go for
one
it.
thing.
That's fun.
As we get towards the end, so I think the
At the
only
end, Brennan, we've got another hour, mate.
I think the only thing that I was unsure about personally, I think I said it to you at the time when we watched it, but there's that scene towards the end of the film, definitely in the last third that you're talking about, I guess, where he is made aware of other replicants that they talk of having an uprising. This is the only part in the film where I just think, oh, I don't know about that, because
Did we need that?
it's kind of something that you would hear about in a film like that, but it bothers me because it feels very out of tone for that universe, and it very much feels
Yeah,
like they're setting it for a third film. And I think I said to you at the time, like, do I really? This is so good. It has such a good ending as well. It
yeah,
leaves your mind open for questions, and then they suggest having a third one, and I
yeah.
don't. I
It
would
leaves
watch
it
it
open, doesn't it? I
unless they did
agree.
something amazing.
I agree. There's an element for me thinking about it. Like if they did a sequel, I almost want them to skip out that bit.
Hmm.
You know how they've let so much time pass. Actually, why not do that again? Why
Yeah,
not
and just
miss
mention it
this
as a backstory
revolution
thing.
out?
Yeah.
Yeah, and move on.
Mm.
I agree. I think it would have been. I would have preferred that scene had we not seen all those replicants just appear. You know, at that perfect moment where they said, "There's," we're a part of this revolution. Then, like all of a sudden, like what looks like about 50 replicants appeared.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you're like, yeah, it
Slightly
wasn't.
disappointing.
That was my again. I 100% agree. That was my only bit that I didn't really like as
Yeah,
much as I would have wanted to.
yeah.
And I agree. I don't think it quite works tonally with the rest of the film, but
No.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's at that point where Kay's given the order to kill Deckard. Okay, fine. Which obviously doesn't happen.
No.
I'm not sure it's that bit's needed really, but hey.
What about your opinions on the very end of the film then?
Yeah, so I guess we kind of led up to that from this. He obviously doesn't kill Deckard and kind of sets him up to be able to see his child.
Mm-hmm.
Is he dying? Is he dead? is he just having a nap? We have that ambiguous ending, which I like. I like an ambiguous ending. We haven't even talked about the original film and which cut we prefer. Obviously, the final cut is the final cut, and that's the one that people should watch.
Absolutely.
And ignore all the others. And that ending is ambiguous.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think for me, I don't mind that ending. I like it. I like it ambiguous. But I just don't want this revolution of replicants. I don't want to see a war film.
I think that's one
partly
of those
because
things.
it's a detective film. Like
Yeah.
Blade Runner, that's the story. It's small, it's intimate. In a big world, actually, it's about a small, intimate story. And I would be worried that would get lost.
You hear about all the off-world stuff, but the whole point is you don't see it. You're not.
No.
I don't think you're meant to see it. You're not meant to see like the colony stuff, are you? It's all.
No.
It's all kind of talked about, and I think it would go against the very nature, exactly like you're saying, of what the film is to then, what these films are to then say we're going to see it. It feels like it's again pandering to the audience. It thinks that's what the audience wants, and as we know, when you're talking about the previous cuts of the other films, what they did because they felt it pleased other audiences, and it makes that film bad.
Yeah.
In reality, that's why the final cut, in my opinion, is the definitive cut. It's the right way to see it because it gives
doesn't
you
have the voiceover.
Well, it's what you're meant to see, you know. And I think the one thing I was going to say is that so the character that you get of Deckard's actual daughter, and all of the stuff they do with like the dream building, I love it. I really love it.
Very cool.
There's some cool things with the idea that she builds it, and when we get the introduction to her character, and she's actually viewing one of her own memories. I think all of that is good. It's really good, and I particularly like the ending because, again, like you're saying, the ambiguous nature of it. I think that you see them meet, and you see that she has absolutely no idea who this old man is that's walking in, but you see the instant kind of his feelings towards seeing her. I can't remember. Do you actually see like his mouth move as if he's about to say something? But
I can't remember.
I can't remember. But at least you see the hand, his hand go up on the glass.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
I love as well. They managed to cast someone who actually looks like could be the son of Harrison Ford and Sean Young if they had a baby.
And I love that.
Amazing.
I always. When they do something like that in a film where they nail casting, I always then try and look to the casting director, like, who did that? Who
found this person?
It's great.
Actually, mentioning Sean Young, obviously we have that moment where a fake Rachel appears that Wallace has made. Almost like this he's tempting Deckard. And apparently Sean Young was used on set. Or at least with the actress who was the lookalike, and I think they used her as part of the special effects as well to make her look more similar and all that stuff. So she helped her with the walk and stuff like that,
and she actually talks, right? Because you get that moment when she says something, and I was trying to remember. There's a shot of her from behind where she talks. And you can't see her mouth.
Yeah, because they're being clever. They don't want to spoil it.
And I remember watching it this time, being like, "Oh, I like that," because they don't like outwardly just show her speaking, and then
I know it wouldn't look very good.
And then they do it, don't they? They actually do show her talking, and I was like, "This is." I remember speaking to you after we watched it, saying, "That is some kind of crazy what they did there."
My least favourite in recent years is in Rogue One, Star Wars story with Princess Leia, which for me, I just was like, this is awful CGI, awful.
And
even the Grand Moff
Tarkin. Oh my word! It's like overkill.
Whereas the guys who made this film, when that film was being made, because Should have hired those guys. Yeah, no, I agree. Amazing, amazing special effects.
Also, like Disney have more money than anyone else on the planet, right? You'd think they could hire the people that do the special
Hire the
effects in
best.
this film, but you know,
Yeah, there's a few things I'd like to talk about if we can just stretch a bit longer. I
yeah,
know we
that's
must be
good.
nearing an hour now. So if
I
you're
know.
still with us, Gold Stars, I'm now in darkness.
Yeah,
So I'm lit by my monitor over here.
I love
Anyway,
it.
so one of the things I love, and I said earlier about the touchstones from the first film in this one, and one of the big things is those themes. The themes that we have from the first film that we see more of in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Eyes is a big deal.
Very much so.
Obviously, both films open with that close up of an eye. And then we have obviously Nyanda Wallace blind.
Yep.
And there are other instances, obviously, when they check, the serial number.
Pull the eye
It's on
down.
the eye. There's lots of moments, there's bits of dialogue where that comes up, which I like.
Yes.
And I'm not going to get into necessarily what that is about, but great. Nyanda Wallace and the first time we meet him and his conversation. I say conversation, it's more like a monologue. How he's talking about angels and his kind of, he's almost kind of talking in that religious language.
Definitely.
And I'm pretty sure Tyrell does a similar thing in the first film.
It's
kind of that element of God as
it's
creator.
the delusions of grandeur, isn't it? It's very much the same. The same in the first film. He's almost like God. Like he's the father of the replicants in the same way.
100%. And I think what's interesting is one thing that really interests me is how he talks about angels, and he talks about love being almost like an angel, and she actually in the film you see her, she's like the angel of death in that sense. And she has a lot of the time that she's either flying or she's in control of like the drone doing the bombing, so almost coming down from the sky. I like that, actually they've thought that through. There's that angelic quality. She's often in white. It's interesting
I didn't think about this, but it's great. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so and I imagine if I watched it again, I'd probably pick up some more bits like that. And that's what, films that have layers. We talked about that with The Prestige. That's where you get that rewatch value. And this stuff is great. I love it. There are other themes, I'm sure, but they were sort of two that really stood out to me. I think the other one another interesting point that I noticed, I watched a couple of these interviews on YouTube. There's loads of interviews on YouTube with the actors and director. And there was one with Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford. And at one point, Ryan Gosling makes a point that actually replicants are not robots. They are exactly like human in terms of how they are built, but they are synthetic.
Yes.
And for me, that makes more sense that actually, okay, Tyrell could make a woman or a female robot that could reproduce, because actually, physically, they are 100% the same, or made the same.
Yes.
And I thought that was very interesting. And there's also another thing with that robot thing. So I'd studied a bit of this stuff when I was at uni. So I've got a bit of inside knowledge of stuff that I already knew. So the word robot means slave. And obviously replicants, they use those replicants to build these outer colonies. And even Nyanda Wallace says, actually we need a slave army to be able to, build what we want, 8 he says 8 outer colonies and all these stars. And but the way that Ryan Gosling says they're not robots, I was like, okay. So he's obviously had some chats about this with Denis, and they're not robots, they're not slaves, and that is why they rebel and why they don't actually want to be, kind of controlled.
Yeah.
And why we've got this revolution coming. But so I thought that's really interesting.
It is, yeah.
It's subtle. It's not overt in the story, but it's great. Anything else?
His character sort of feels like he's failing because he hasn't the ultimate, like you're saying, the ultimate creation for him is to have one that can get pregnant so they can keep creating, so he almost doesn't have to create anymore. It's causing them to create themselves, essentially, like cutting out the middleman. I don't know. I think we could go on and on.
We can. Just a couple more things.
Go on.
A couple of cameos that I particularly liked. Obviously, Edward James Olmos. Great one to have Gaff come back in and do that little scene.
Really good. It's the tiniest scene completely, but it's totally great that he's in it.
And obviously wouldn't have been the same if he hadn't have done a little bit of the old origami. So that was a big thumbs up.
Love it.
Yeah, my other favourite was Lenny James, the guy running the orphanage.
I knew you'd love that. He's great. He's really good.
He is great. So my wife and I recently watched Line of Duty, and he's in season 1 of that, and he's just so good. He's class, and obviously he's in Walking Dead, and he's in loads of stuff.
Yeah. Great.
Years back, he was in that film Human Traffic, wasn't he? Did you ever see that?
No, I can't remember. No, I don't think so.
There's a great scene in that with Danny Dyer masturbating. But worth checking that out, yeah.
I will.
Because he's got his headphones on. His mum walks in to give him a cup of tea. Great scene. So if you haven't seen Human Traffic, worth a go.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lenny James, who's great.
Yeah.
Anything else that we haven't said? I mean, I could talk about this film for a long time.
Yeah.
I am now sitting in the dark completely.
As am I, in fact.
Yeah, but you've got a light on, haven't you?
Yeah, it's true. I've got a light on here, but otherwise the room is bathed.
I'm going to close my browser down. There I am. I'm still here.
That's true mood lighting, isn't it?
It is true mood lighting. Anyway, we have not yet done our rating.
No.
I think this film is a masterpiece. 5 stars. Brendan?
I have one thing to say before I give my star rating. This film is, for me, summed up perfectly by the way the doors move on the cars. It is slow, methodical, but beautiful, and designed perfectly. It's 5 stars from me, Dan.
I like that. I like that description. Yeah, I'm going to go and watch Blade Runner 2049 again. That's how I feel. I could watch this film again right now.
Definitely.
And I want to. I probably won't because I've got things to do. But go and see my wife. Anyway, Brendan, it's been a pleasure.
It was a pleasure, man.
Anyone watching this wants to leave a comment, feel free. Wants to get in touch with us on social media, we are on Instagram. We are also on Twitter, where we may or may not respond to any messages.
Yes.
But we will read them at some point. And if you think we're wrong about anything, you can highlight Brendan.
Mention that too, yes.
Mention Brendan, don't mention me. Okay, so it's been a pleasure, Brendan. It's time to say goodbye. I'm going to salute today. Goodbye.
Goodbye.